People often say that the people who know about your past are the ones who have the power to ruin your future. For Meghan Markle, that dangerous person is a man named Trevor Engelson. He was a movie producer in Hollywood, and he was the man she married a long time ago. This was way before she ever had dreams of living in a place like Windsor Castle. When their marriage ended, Trevor did not just walk away with a broken heart. He walked away with secrets. He walked away with stories about her. These were stories about a version of Meghan that very few people ever got to see. According to people who are close friends with Trevor, one of these stories is about a single night in the year 2016. It was a night in the city of Toronto that could have destroyed Meghan's dreams of becoming a royal before they even started. This night was hidden very carefully. There were no stories in the newspapers about it. There were no police reports written about it. There was no trace of it in the public records. It was like it never happened, but now people are talking. Behind the perfect image of the Duchess, there is the woman that Trevor once knew. He knew her as the organizer. He knew her as the supplier. He knew her as the person who could keep a party going long after everyone else had gone home to sleep. And this is exactly where our story begins. The year was 2016, and it was in Toronto. Meghan Markle was very close to becoming part of a real-life fairy tale. Prince Harry had just flown into the city to see her. He was sneaking away from the people at the palace who watched his every move. It was supposed to be a private visit, just a quiet time for the two of them. On the outside, it looked like a sweet romance that was growing in secret. But according to people who know the truth, what happened that night was not innocent at all. Sources claim that Meghan was not just hanging out with Harry. They say she was organizing something that the party crowd in Toronto called a run. In simple words, this meant she was planning more than just a quiet dinner or a nice glass of wine. It meant they were going to do things they shouldn't do. It meant using illegal substances. It meant entering a dangerous world that Harry should have stayed far away from. Then, a name was mentioned that shocked everyone. The name was Princess Eugenie, who is Harry's own cousin. People said her name was part of the plans for that night. Nobody knows for sure if she knew about it or if she did anything wrong, but just hearing her name made people's jaws drop in surprise. If they had taken one wrong step, or if one newspaper had found out, it would have been a disaster. It wouldn't have just ruined Harry and Meghan's romance. It could have embarrassed the entire royal family. Whispers say that something went wrong that night. It was a very close call. It was a moment of danger where they almost got caught. If the secret had leaked out, Meghan and Harry's story might have ended right there. But the story did not end. Why did it continue? It continued because the story was buried deep underground. There were no reports from the police. There were no scandals in the tabloids. There were no big headlines in the morning newspapers. There was only silence. In stories like this one, silence speaks louder than noise. Insiders claim that powerful people worked very fast to fix the problem. They pulled strings at the highest levels to make the problem go away. The palace had too much to lose. Harry's image was already weak. Meghan was just starting to become famous. And Princess Eugenie's name was too close to the trouble. Covering it up was the only choice they had. This could have been a huge public scandal with flashing camera lights and front-page shame. Instead, it was erased overnight. This kind of erasing does not happen by accident. It requires influence. It requires a lot of money. It requires power moving quietly in the background where no one can see. And standing right in the middle of it all was Meghan Markle. She was calm and collected. Sources say she was shockingly good at keeping the night alive and then keeping it quiet. To really understand how Meghan could move so easily through a crazy night like that, you have to understand the world she lived in. Toronto was not just the city where she filmed her TV show, Suits. It was the place where she built a second life. This life was hidden from the cameras and hidden from her family back home. That world revolved around a place called Soho House. This was not a polite club for royalty. It was a playground for the elite. It was where powerful and rich people came to do whatever they wanted. Drinking wine and laughing were just the things you saw on the surface. Behind closed doors, insiders say the real menu was much more dangerous. They say cocaine was delivered in secret, and it was arranged without anyone asking questions. According to people who partied with her, Meghan was not just watching from the side. She was the connector. She was the person people trusted when the night needed energy. She didn't just know who wanted illegal things. She knew how to get them. She knew how much to get. She knew how to make sure it arrived without anyone noticing. Her value in that group wasn't just her beauty or her charm. It was her access. People remembered her as the life of the party, but also as the one who made the party happen. She was a woman who could make others feel safe and untouchable, even when they were breaking the rules. Once you understand that, you start to see why the whispers about that night in Toronto never really went away. This was not just a one-time mistake. This was a peek at the real Meghan, who lived behind the nice quotes on Instagram and the speeches about charity. This was the Meghan that Trevor Engelson knew very well. Before Toronto and before Harry, there was Trevor Engelson. He was Meghan's first husband. He was a Hollywood producer who thought he was marrying a fun and free-spirited actress. They had a wedding in Jamaica back in 2011. It should have been a fun and relaxing trip to the beach. Instead, it gave people the first real look at the Meghan that Trevor would later understand better than anyone else. Guests from that trip still talk about it today. They don't talk about the promises they made. They don't talk about the beautiful beach. They don't talk about the love story. What they remember is Meghan sitting down and rolling over 100 marijuana cigarettes for her guests. She rolled 100 of them. It wasn't just a quick joke by the bride. It was a job. It was an organized effort to make sure the party had a certain mood and that everyone at the wedding had what they needed to get high. At the time, people laughed about it. They said it was playful. They said it showed that Meghan was relaxed and fun. But now when you look at it alongside the stories from the Toronto nightlife, it feels different. It feels less like a funny story and more like a pattern. Meghan wasn't just joining in on the fun. She was the one creating it. She was supplying the party. She was directing the mood. Trevor saw all of this. He didn't just marry Meghan. He married the version of her that knew exactly how to keep a party going and how to make sure nobody forgot it. This was not just one single trait she had. Meghan mastered something that very few people can do well. She lived several different lives at the same time. To her friends in Hollywood, she was the actress working hard and running to auditions, talking about her big dreams. To her family back home, she was the polished daughter who always looked perfect. To Prince Harry, she was the understanding partner. She was the secret keeper who made him feel safe from the bright lights of the palace. But in Toronto, among the crowd at Soho House, Meghan was something completely different. She was loud. She was confident. According to sources, she did not blink when illegal drugs were put on the table. She was the one who made everyone feel like the night could go on forever because she held the keys to whatever anyone needed. The smart thing about it was not just what she did, but how she kept these worlds separate. Meghan could show just enough of herself to make each group feel like they really knew her, but she never let the different versions of herself cross paths. That was not an accident. That was a survival skill. It is what made the night in Toronto in 2016 so believable. Meghan had always been the person who could step into a room and become exactly what that moment needed her to be. When Meghan met Prince Harry, she didn't need to pretend to be innocent. Harry already had a reputation of his own. People knew about his photos from Las Vegas. They knew about his late nights. They heard whispers about him doing wild things. He was no stranger to scandal. He didn't need someone to calm him down or tame him. He needed someone who could keep up with him. Maybe he even needed someone who could lead him. And that is exactly what Meghan offered him. According to sources close to that circle, she gave Harry something he could not find inside the palace walls. She gave him freedom. She gave him the freedom to do what he wanted without a scandal. She gave him the freedom to step into the shadows without worrying about who might tell a story to the newspapers. Meghan knew how to make bad behavior safe. She knew how to keep the mess hidden. For Harry, who grew up with cameras always in his face, that kind of connection was amazing. It was intoxicating. Meghan wasn't just his girlfriend. She became the one person who could see his darker side and not be scared. She was the one person who didn't just accept it, but she controlled it. She managed it. She made it feel like he couldn't get in trouble. This is why their connection felt so fast and so strong. Beneath the love story was something much more planned. Meghan offered Harry the one thing he wanted most, which was secrecy, and that made her more than just a partner. It made her essential to him. Every legend leaves traces behind. Meghan's traces weren't only in the stories people whispered, they were written on her face. Old photographs showed that her face used to look softer and rounder. Her nose used to look like her mother's nose, wide and familiar. But as Meghan rose higher into the spotlight, her appearance changed. Her face got sharper angles. The bridge of her nose got narrower. Her nostrils were redrawn. The official explanation was simple. They said it was just cosmetic upgrades or Hollywood polish. It is nothing unusual for an actress preparing to shine on camera, but sources close to her years in Toronto claimed it was something darker. They said that using too much cocaine can eat away at the inside of your nose. It can make the cartilage collapse from the inside. Surgery stops being about looking pretty. It becomes about survival. According to these whispers, Meghan's procedures weren't just tweaks for beauty. They were repairs. They were cover-ups. It was a way to erase the evidence of a lifestyle she couldn't afford to have people know about. Each new surgery wasn't just a new look. It was burying the version of her that came before. If you line up the photos across the years, you don't just see a woman trying to look perfect. You see someone rewriting her face to hide the past. But Meghan's erasing didn't stop at the mirror. It stretched into her entire life. Sources say that friends from Toronto who once partied with her disappeared from her circle overnight. College friends who had built memories with her were quietly replaced. Even ties with her family were cut clean. There was only silence where connections used to be. This wasn't reinvention in a fun way. This was a strategy. It was a cycle of building, erasing, rebuilding, and erasing again. Each time she stepped into a new world, she burned the bridge so no one could cross back. By the time the whispers about her past began to surface, Meghan could shrug her shoulders and say, "That's not me." And in a way, she was right, because that version of Meghan no longer existed. Trevor Engelson saw it happen firsthand. He had been erased. He wasn't just erased as an ex-husband. He was erased as a witness. He was a witness to the Meghan who created atmospheres and supplied nights that others only whispered about. By cutting off the old ties, Meghan made sure no one could stitch the pieces of her past back together. But cracks don't stay hidden forever. Over time, Meghan's carefully created story began to show seams. In one interview, she insisted she had never Googled Harry before meeting him. Yet in another interview, she described his favorite traits with so much detail that it sounded like she had studied him. She claimed she was isolated in the UK, trapped, and cut off from the world. Yet, records show she was traveling frequently to places like Italy, Amsterdam, and New York. Then came the mystery around her son Archie's birth. Meghan refused to release the full birth certificate. This fueled guesses about why the secrecy mattered. Rumors even swirled that her own birth year might not be the one she claimed. Changing your age is a detail so ordinary in Hollywood, but it is extraordinary in royalty, and even the palace seemed to distance itself from her story. At first, Meghan's royal biography painted her as a scholar. It said she was a double major at Northwestern University. It said she was fluent in multiple languages. It said she was decorated for humanitarian work. Then quietly, all of that disappeared. The royal website stripped away the credentials. What was left was one line: Meghan Markle, actress from Suits. For an institution as careful as the palace, that wasn't a mistake. It was done on purpose. It was a subtle rewriting of the myth they once helped create. So who is Meghan Markle really? Is she the Hollywood actress who dreamed of something bigger? Is she the Duchess who walked into Windsor Castle with the world watching? Or is she the strategist described by insiders? Is she the supplier, the eraser, the master of reinvention who built her future one mask at a time? The evidence suggests she was never a woman swept up by fate. She was a woman who played the long game. She was someone who knew how to put things in boxes. She knew how to control the story. She knew how to bury truths that were inconvenient beneath new versions of herself. She did it step by step, nose by nose, and circle by circle. And that's why Meghan's story still grabs the public's attention. Because for every polished charity speech, there is a whisper of what came before. For every photo in the spotlight, there is a shadow just outside the frame. Trevor Engelson's memory of Meghan rolling 100 joints in Jamaica is still there. The whispers of that Toronto night in 2016 are still there. The carefully erased faces from her past are still there. They all point to the same unsettling truth. Meghan Markle built her legend not by chance, but by design. The most haunting part is that this expose only scratches the surface. The real question isn't what she has already hidden. It is what is still out there waiting to be uncovered, because Meghan Markle remains what she has always been. She is a woman behind a mask, smiling in the spotlight, while the real story lingers unfinished in the shadows.